The night was cold and eerily quiet, broken only by the hum of flickering neon lights from a roadside diner on the edge of town. Inside, 4 heavily tattooed bikers sat around a table, their leather jackets creaking as they leaned over half-empty coffee cups. Outside, rain misted against the window, blurring the world beyond. Then, the diner door creaked open, and a little girl, no more than 7 years old, stepped in, shivering, her cheeks streaked with tears. Her tiny hands clutched a worn photograph, and her voice trembled as she whispered, "Please, can someone help me find my brother? If you believe in kindness, second chances, and that heroes come in the most unexpected forms, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more real, heart-touching stories like this one to life." The bikers turned toward the voice. The biggest of them, a grizzled man with a grey beard and eyes that had seen too much, froze mid-sip. The child looked so small, so fragile, standing there among men who looked like they belonged to another world. Her denim jacket was damp from the rain, and her lips quivered as she slid into the booth across from them. Her name was Emily, and she said her older brother, Jake, had been missing for 3 days. The police had searched the woods, the park, and even the nearby train station, but they'd found nothing. "They said they're doing all they can," she whispered, "but I know they've stopped looking." The leader of the bikers, known as Bear, exchanged glances with his crew, Tank, Ghost, and Diesel. They were members of an old motorcycle club once notorious for trouble, but lately they'd been trying to change their image. Bear's rough exterior hid a man who had once lost a daughter in a hit-and-run, a pain that never left him. Seeing Emily's trembling hands brought all that buried grief rushing back. He reached into his vest pocket, pulled out a napkin, and slid it to her. "Tell me everything you remember," he said gently. Emily told them how Jake had gone out to buy milk from the store across the railway line one evening and never returned. Their mother worked late shifts at a diner nearby, and Emily had been home alone waiting for him. "He promised he'd be back before the streetlights came on," she said, her voice cracking. The bikers listened silently, their expressions hardening not in anger at her, but at the world that had failed her. Bear clenched his jaw. He'd heard enough. They left a stack of bills on the table and stood. "We'll find him," Bear said firmly, his gravelly voice carrying the weight of a vow. Emily blinked up at them, disbelief flickering in her eyes. She had gone to the police, the neighbors, even the church. No one had listened. But these strangers, these rugged men with steel in their eyes, seemed ready to move mountains for her. The bikers roared out into the night on their motorcycles, engines echoing like thunder through the empty streets. They began at the corner store where Jake was last seen. The clerk remembered him, a polite kid with messy brown hair who had come in around sunset. He'd bought milk, waved goodbye, and crossed the street. But something odd caught the clerk's memory. A rusted blue van had been parked nearby for days. Following that lead, the bikers split up. Diesel hacked into traffic camera feeds using an old friend's connections, while Tank rode through nearby alleys asking around the street crowd. Ghost checked abandoned warehouses by the rail yard. Bear stayed in contact with Emily's mother, who broke down in tears when she learned that strangers were out there doing what the police had long stopped doing. "Why would they help us?" she asked. Bear simply said, "Because no one helped me when I needed it most." Hours turned into days, sleep became a luxury. The bikers followed every clue, every whisper from the streets. The blue van had been spotted near an old storage lot outside town. When they arrived, they found tire tracks, fresh ones. Inside a discarded soda can was a folded receipt from a gas station, time-stamped just 2 hours earlier. Bear's heart pounded. They were close. By the third day, the 72-hour mark, fatigue showed in every line of their faces. The sun was setting, bleeding orange and red across the sky. They pulled into an abandoned cabin area near the forest where the van had been reported. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the creak of trees. Then, from inside one of the cabins, they heard it, a faint cry. Bear motioned for quiet. Ghost moved to the side window, prying it open with a knife. Inside, they saw a boy tied to a chair, his face bruised but alive. Emily's brother, Jake. Two men were talking near a table, low voices, rough laughter. Without hesitation, the bikers burst in. One grabbed a bat, but Tank's punch landed first, sending him sprawling. Ghost pulled Jake free, while Bear pinned the other man against the wall. "You mess with kids," Bear growled. "You answer to us." Minutes later, the sound of sirens filled the air. Not because the police had found them, but because Bear had already called it in. When the officers arrived, they found the kidnappers cuffed and bleeding, evidence scattered across the floor, and a group of bikers standing protectively around a frightened but safe boy. Jake was rushed to the hospital where Emily waited with her mother. When the doctors finally let them in, Emily ran to her brother, clutching his hand and sobbing uncontrollably. The bikers stood quietly in the doorway, their massive frames almost blending into the background. Bear wiped his eyes discreetly beneath his sunglasses, though no one was fooled. The story of the Guardian Bikers, as local news later called them, spread fast. Reporters wanted interviews, but the men refused. They didn't do it for fame or forgiveness. They did it because somewhere deep inside, they still believed in right and wrong. A few days later, Bear visited the family's home. Emily's mother hugged him, tears streaming down her face. "You gave me back my son," she whispered. He shook his head. "No, ma'am," he said softly. "You gave us back our souls." The following weekend, the bikers returned to the same diner where it all began. As they sat down, the waitress brought over 4 coffees, and one extra Emily came skipping in, holding a drawing she'd made, 4 bikers standing beside a little girl and her brother, all smiling under a bright sun. She'd written at the top, "My heroes." Bear took it, folded it carefully, and slipped it into his jacket pocket. He would keep it there forever. That night, as they rode away beneath the glowing moon, Bear looked up at the stars and thought about second chances. Maybe they couldn't undo the past, the mistakes, the fights, the lost years, but they could make sure kids like Emily never felt alone in a world that had forgotten what compassion looked like. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share this video. Let's remind the world that even in darkness, light can come from the most unexpected places.